All right, and we should be live. So let's start off the live stream the way every live stream does, and someone let us know if you can hear us. Um,
Yeah, that's an
beautiful.
important and them as well. Hey,
You got the, you got
girls,
the.
go. Hey, hush. Daddy's doing a live stream. Thank you. Boy,
they're just saying congratulations. So
yeah,
for
that's
anyone
right.
watching
Yeah.
this who doesn't know me, which would be really weird, I'm Rachel with the Shades of Orange, and I feel like it's the like obligatory YouTube thing to do a live stream when you hit a milestone. So I don't do a lot of live streams, but I figured that's what I should do. And I so graciously asked Thomas to join me because, quite honestly, I do enjoy live streaming alone, and there's very few people I would like to do it with. If anyone doesn't know Thomas, I'm going to have a link to his channel afterwards because I'm disorganized and didn't have it in the description box yet. But it's Thomas from SFF 180, and I think you're perfect for this for a few reasons. One being the fact that half my audience loves horror, half of them loves science fiction and fantasy, and you kind of fit the bill on both sides, so that works really well. And you're not a new kid on the block either. I hate to admit how long I've been around BookTube to finally get to this milestone, and so part of my live stream idea for tonight was to talk a little bit about I guess how like YouTube has changed or BookTube or kind of how you feel about the growth over the years, just as the platform has changed. We can get into TikTok if we dare.
Yeah, it's certainly a very different. I mean, I'm not an OG, of course, obviously, but first off, before we get into all this, I want to say congratulations on your 20K. That's really awesome. And
Thanks.
let's
I
see,
appreciate it.
in your honor tonight, I have what the hell is this? Hang on. This is a peanut butter porter.
That sounds delicious. I love peanut butter.
Yeah, this we got this just on a road trip recently, and so this is from a Michigan brewery. And the back it says, "Here's to happy."
I like it.
It doesn't say what happy what. It could be happy anything. Could be, here's to a happy, marriage. Here's to a happy camping trip. Here's to a happy colonoscopy. Right? Could be anything. So
I'll just write, yeah,
for
happy
all the
BookTube
happy yes,
anniversary. There you
peanut butter
go.
porter.
I love
Mm,
it. Well, I'm drinking hot chocolate from a Royal Bank of Canada mug, so
there you go. All
I
right.
think you beat me there.
So toast and to
Cheers.
40K, right?
I mean, I should pretend this is like champagne or something fancy, but
That's it.
I was
Yeah.
saying to Thomas that even booking this, I had to make sure it wasn't too long after my bedtime because my kids just gone to bed, so that there isn't too much screaming on my end. But but that's also my bedtime, so it's kind of a problem.
Oh, well.
Anyway, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. We can chat about books, recommendations, all of that. But otherwise, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess like Thomas, what brought you to YouTube?
Wow. Okay. This well, no one's here to hear my life story because this is your celebration, but I'll oblige anyway. Thanks for asking. I had been doing science fiction book reviews online for quite a while. I'm gonna age myself, but yeah, I think right around just after the turn of the century. Yeah, so I've really aged myself. But no, I kind of got in on the ground floor of what became like the first like book blogging wave
Hmm.
in the 2000s. Although what I had was like, I have to do everything the hard way and different from everyone else because I'm stubborn and dumb. But I put together, I guess what was like a traditional website, like using a
Yeah.
design app and everything like that. And I had that site for quite a few years, and that was called sfreviews.net. And through that I did actually manage in the early days, hi Mike, to establish like relationships with publicists and authors and things like that. And so, I think I launched the site around 2001, and by 2004, 2005, I was getting review copies and arcs and things like that, and it was all very exciting, right? And then, after a while, just when you've been doing something for a bit and the momentum kind of slows, and it's not like you lose interest, but life just happens.
Hmm.
um, I realized that I needed to freshen up, and I decided on YouTube because in like the early 20 teens, I had some friends who were like gamers,
Hmm.
still are. Some of them they had YouTube gaming channels, and I thought to myself, huh, they're doing channels based on this thing that they love. They love gaming. I love reading. I wonder if I had no idea that BookTube was even a thing.
Nice.
And it had started. There was like some of the OGs were already doing their channels at that time, but I did it, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what the rules were, if there were any. I just kind of like started recording and uploading, and met some folks that way, and then just the channel kind of started growing that way.
Well, that's what honestly what I think I like is maybe it's it's different when people come into the game these days. Like I feel like they're coming into the game, they want to know the rules, they want to know like, okay, how do I get like here? And that's why I think there's hopefully a little bit of authenticity that comes with channels like ours, where it literally was like, I was like, oh, like I'm just gonna turn on my camera, talk about what books I got from the library that week, talk about what I read, and stick it online and see what happens. And I didn't grow very fast right away, but you get some passion there. Oh, so Thomas, I'm going to segue us for a moment here. Are you familiar with, speaking of gaming, are you familiar with the game Death Stranding?
I am, although I don't have a PlayStation. I'm kind of like a, not that I don't want one, but you can't get one. I mean, you literally can't get one. It took me long enough to get my Xbox Series X. That took months and months. So yes, I'm familiar with Hideo Kojima and his crazy worlds, and apparently he is developing an exclusive game for Xbox as well.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I know he's got a lot of
Yeah.
attention. The reason I bring it up is that he has well several games out there, and this one, Death Stranding. I don't know if I should name, but this person seems to know me quite personally, and he's complaining that I don't like Death Stranding, which I describe as Amazon baby delivery in a vacuum container. But it is
Oh
technically
yeah,
horror
thank you.
science fiction, so he's like, you should like it. That's what you read.
I,
It's like I
uh,
don't want to watch people deliver like packages with a baby in their backpack all day.
I have to say that little log line kind of makes it sound awesome, right? Just like
Well,
baby
there you go.
delivery. Yeah, but then he
Well,
has to go through this weird kind of strange dreamlike apocalyptic landscape or something. At least that's what like all the early cutscenes and trailers were looking like. So it looked trippy and great, but it's like
yeah, I didn't understand. I think I haven't, as much as I want to love weird horror, I don't think I love weird horror as much as I think I do. So I think I'll get you to play. I'll get you to play Death Stranding with him. That's what I'm going to take out of
okay,
this.
I'll just
Jesse
have
told me
to,
he was going to call me out on this.
sell my kidney to get a PS5 first, but we'll work that here. Cross that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah. Oh, have you read Goddess of Filth? I don't if you can chime in on that one at all with me.
I have not. I have not yet. But I want to because I've got V. Castro's upcoming book, The Haunting of Alejandra, is on
Yeah.
my watch list for 2023, and just saw that video, and so I want to like kind of get caught up with her earlier one, and so
Yeah.
it's on my radar for sure.
For sure, and I mean, that's the case with every time a booktuber's like, "Hey, have you read this one book?" But I have. It's one of my favorite, horror novellas, and for me, it's a few reasons I like it, so it kinda depends on what your tastes are. First of all, I love possession horror, so basically, if someone is possessed, I'm there, and it's for a few reasons. I have a Catholic background, so I grew up specifically remembering my parents explaining that possessions were completely real. You could be possessed by the devil if you played with a Ouija board. And so while I tend to be a skeptic and all of that, there's always that little piece where, this little childhood piece of me is like, but they said it was real. So I'm attracted to it that way. And then with that specific book, I think it's a really good response to a lot of the classic possession stories out there because they tend to be about a woman getting possessed and then the Catholic priest always, coming in. And that novella, without saying too much more, really flips this on its head. And I think kind of brings back the power to the women who are usually just victims of the story and kind of a means to an end. So I really liked it. So hopefully that at least gives you a better idea,
Yeah,
Skylar, if that sounds
I'm
up
always
your
happy to hear
alley.
like kind of things that
Yeah.
subvert tropes of certain like subgenres and things like that. Although, everybody, you heard it here first. If someone gets possessed, I'm there. Quote Rachel. Okay. Now she's confessing in advance.
Oh, it's true. Well, I've said before, I've probably repeated it on another live stream, but when Stephanie from Books in the Freezer first was kind of finding me to be her co-host for the horror podcast, is her husband walked in on her watching one of my YouTube videos, and I don't know what I was talking about, but all she remembers is her husband being like, "Oh, I just love when like an arm gets like ripped off," and she's like, "This is the person you're going to be live streaming with," and podcasting. I was like, "Oops." So I was like, "I swear I'm normal," kind of.
No,
I
no,
mean, I
no,
think
that's
you
fine.
summed it up well. I was so tickled pink. You made a joke way back about me being like the horror mom of BookTube,
Yeah, you're
where
the heart.
apparently,
You're the heart
like
of
people
mom.
say I come across as like sweet or whatever, and hopefully I come across as nice. But then I also love really messed up books, and it kind of gets
Yes.
awkward on like camera sometimes.
Well, you are Canadian, so
There
yes,
you go. Yeah. So
you're
I'm like,
always very nice about like just stabbing and murdering people. So
exactly. It's
right.
how we roll. I was gonna say I
Uh,
appreciate Michael coming to join us. He said, "Love to hear your opinions on this book." I haven't read it, so if you have an opinion, it's all yours,
oh
Thomas.
God, Empire Star. I got this thing. I read that when I was like a teenager, so I've got like next to zero memory of it. But I mean, I assume I liked it at the time because I went on to read other Sam Delaney stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot of Delaney coverage this coming February. I mean, I have a actual Delaney week planned, and so that's something I've had ideas for videos in my head. Some of them just percolating for years and years, and this is one of those where I'm like, I think I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So,
Nice.
but yeah, but years since I read that one though.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the topic, if anyone has not yet checked out, Thomas has just released my favorite videos that he puts out every year, and that's his anticipated releases. So he does one for horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And even though I do those videos, I do them super early. And well, first of all, I do them early so that I'm not, I like to beat everyone to the punch, but by doing so, I miss out on a lot of the books that come out later that year. And something I'm really terrible at is you read the blurb from the marketing, and then you're supposed to like explain on camera what the book's about. I'm so bad at that. So I've gone back and listened to old videos and sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm way off and I'm like completely misread the marketing material. So
Yeah, it's
I
it's
re- it's a
tough,
gift.
because
Yeah.
especially because when I do those videos, when I do my anticipated videos,
Mhm.
it's not like a mailbag, right? Mailbag, I'll sit there and
Yeah.
I'll just bore everyone reading the entire sell sheet, right? On
Yeah.
what I need to do when I do the anticipated videos is I know I need to log line these books, right? It's got to be one or two sentences to just give everyone a flavor of it. And
Yeah.
so I start by reading like the promotional material, and then I'm like, okay, well, how can I distill that? Because sometimes they're super vague. It's like,
Yeah.
uh, breathtaking world of this and that, and dreams and
Yeah.
heartache, and what
It's
and I'm
always like The Martian meets
like, yeah, you're
The
right.
Wheel
And
of Time plus
it's giving you vibes, but it's not giving you like, all right, but what's it about? And so I
yes.
have to kind of figure that out, and sometimes I get it wrong, but I know I kind of need to get through it because I'm this lunatic who tries to do 36 books in 20 minutes, and so you know.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, I appreciate it. So yeah, definitely go check those out. Like I said, afterwards, if my brain is on, I'll put some links in the description box in case people, like I said, just search Thomas at SFF 180. A pop up on YouTube. I've done that many a time, and it does work. Selfishly, I keep plugging your channel because I said that when you hit 20K, I want to be the live stream guest on your channel. So selfishly, I'm trying to get there faster so I have an excuse to live stream again.
Okay, well, that's a deal. Although I think it'll be some time before I get to 20K.
Yeah.
I've never, I don't think, been one of those channels that the algos grab a hold of and just push out there to people. But
I,
I seem to be kind of a word of mouth channel.
Yeah, that's the
And,
thing. It's like I find like anyone who knows your channel loves
mhm.
your channel. Like you can see it in
Well,
the comments here. I'm terrible for putting things up on the screen, but
I
like I
appreciate
always
that.
find like
But,
it is one that if people know your channel, know your name, it's like immediately, I love Thomas. I love his channel. Oh, I love his
oh,
reviews. I love his thumbnails. Like,
well,
and I mean, obviously, like I wouldn't name names, but like I can't think of ever a time where I've had someone be like, oh, I'm not really into his channel or this or that. Like, again, it's just I think what we need to do is get you doing more like little TikTok videos. Like we'll get a little like I don't know Backstreet Boys song going on, have you like dance with the book. That's
mhm.
one thing. Have you tried doing a like YouTube short or anything, or have you gotten on TikTok?
I've done a couple. I did a YouTube short. Well, I did the one where I talked about somebody put like I was replying to somebody who did something on Twitter, and then I did a very quick. Well, it's more like an unboxing teaser when I bought that
Oh
ridiculous
yes, I
format.
remember
Yeah,
seeing
so
that.
I've
Yes.
done a few, and I talked about like Rings of Power very quickly for like a minute. So just to kind of experiment with the format. I don't know that it's something I'll do frequently, but I'd never say never. You know.
Yeah. No, for
But,
sure.
thank you for all the recs and the nice. Well, I mean, sure, I'd love 20K, after 9 years on BookTubes, that would be, that would feel nice. But, when I crossed 10, I kind of felt like, all right, there we go. That's the threshold.
Like I
And
did notice, yeah,
yeah.
that like 10 sort of seems to be like kind of the sweet spot. Like for me, I remember like it would be like I was at whatever it'd be like 9,000 and I like message a publisher trying to get a book and it was just like dead silence and like things like I found like they're a little there seems to be that little like, bump when you hit that jump. So let's see, Jesse is asking if you could get a sci-fi adapted into a show, what would you get? It has to be done already. That's the hard problem. I feel like everything has an adaptation at this point. I have to look at my shelves.
I would be interested. I think it would be freaking impossible, but I'd be interested to see someone try to do the Inhibitor trilogy, some Alistair Reynolds stuff.
Oh, that would be
And
interesting.
yeah, and I would also, I think it would be interesting to see maybe somebody try to tackle the culture. Although, the themes and things in it might be kind of, it would take a lot of work to convey. I don't think you can, the thing about The Expanse is it's like you can distill it down to its essence.
Yeah.
And it can concentrate on characters, and whereas I think Reynolds' work and Banks's work is, very much idea fiction. But I still think that, I think some really skilled and talented showrunners could do it. The trick would be finding those people and finding the, gazillion dollars to do it, because we need a
Exactly.
Rings of Power budget to pull it off. And I don't know,
Yeah.
but what I have been enjoying watching. Oh my God, the Peripheral nailed it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. It's
Oh, the Peripheral, yeah. And if
I'm mhm.
read the books first. Read the book
Okay.
first, and then, and of course they deviate some, but I feel like it is really a respectful. It's like the first time someone finally put William Gibson on the screen and like did it right,
Yeah.
and it's just terrific to see.
That's nice, cause yeah, I gotta admit, I did not understand Neuromancer. I have to go back to it. I remember reading it and be like, "I don't know what I just read." Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, a lot of my favorite science fiction books that haven't already been adapted are things like Blind Side by Peter Watts. I love it, but I don't know if it would translate, like, well. I'm someone who actually, if I really like a book, I don't want it translated usually, or I just ignore the adaptation. And I think it's a little bit like the types of books I like that I just would be annoyed because they'd have to make those adaptations, and I don't know. Yeah. Not that I'm a snob about it. Like a lot of times I will love adaptations of books that I hated, or it's actually more the case. Like if I didn't like the book, I'm more likely to like the movie. As weird as that sounds.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that's not uncommon. I've known, that there have been adaptations into movies and TV that on occasion have improved upon the source material,
Yeah.
right?
And and there you
Uh,
go. You beat Joseph to the punch. You
there
just
we are.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Just
I was
right
gonna
in
say
there, yeah. No, the
there you go.
Peripheral's terrific, and,
Sounds like
it's like,
everyone's loving it. Okay,
yeah,
so apparently we should be watching this. So I'll tell my
yeah.
husband.
Although I'm still behind. I need to read Agency. It's been sitting on my desk and for years, and I'm just like, but I'll try to get that to that early in the year. But yeah, I mean, and you're talking about, I think the classic example of an adaptation that I think improves on the source material would be the Shawshank Redemption.
Okay, that I haven't read the book, so yeah, I
Because
can't
the all
comment.
right, well, I mean, it's worth reading if you like King. That it's one of his. So Four Past Midnight
Mhm.
was that first. He's gotten into this pattern. Every few years, he does a collection of four novellas. And Four Past Midnight was one where he was specifically trying to do novellas that were non-horror. He was trying to get out of his wheelhouse, and his agent was like, "Oh, maybe just one horror." And he's like, "Okay."
Fine.
But
Yeah.
the original story, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, is not a horror story. It's this, tale of a prisoner and what he goes through. If you've seen the movie, you kind of know the basics. But I won't spoil anything except to say that the ending of the movie fixes a plot flaw at the ending of the original novella. It's a
Okay.
it's a minor plot flaw, but it's one of those that just nags at you. It's like, but how? The movie fixes that, and then
Oh, I was
goes,
gonna say now I've now okay, now you got me, like,
yeah,
really intrigued. I'm actually gonna have to prioritize that because I
yeah.
like those kind of
So,
things where you see and you're like, "That's not right," and yeah, they actually take the time to iron that out.
mhm.
I would
Because,
also
Frank
argue
Darabont has just a good sense of story,
yeah,
and so, although I don't know, nobody seems to like what he did with the ending of The Mist,
I was gonna say
which I can sympathize with, but there you are.
there we go, yeah, people are talking about yeah, saying that it sounds like, yeah, a lot of people agree that the movie's the way to go with
Different seasons,
show.
yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, JJ
yeah.
Newbold.
Oh, here, I'll put that
Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
all right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
Correction
good
there.
stuff. I was gonna say I don't have them all memorized, and here, I was gonna say scrolling up, but here we go. More proof. Like I said, everyone loves Thomas. Like I said, you have a like cult following. I'm pretty sure. So I'm pretty lucky, honestly, that I've had some of your subscribers come my way. Um,
You are being so nice, but remember,
yeah.
this is your night. This is your 20K celebration. I thank you all for all
I
the nice
I
words
was gonna say
about
we
me,
need to
but
like
we're here
have
for
confetti to like start flying out.
we're here for
There.
Rachel tonight, and have a good
No.
time with Rachel. So
Yeah.
on her,
No,
so
it's been gratifying. Like, I think the biggest thing I've been happy with is really getting through those like really tiny kid years. Obviously, he's still small, but there's something like that cartoons are now a thing and things like that that kind of give a little bit more sanity. Because I do find, and I mean, I totally understand why it happens, but it is hard to get through those kid years. So I've seen so many women who have like booktubed and then they have, they get pregnant, they have a kid, and they always do the announcement being like, I'm not going away, I'm just going to be away. And then they disappear off the thing. And I'm like that person, like going and like checking my sub feed and making sure I'm still subscribed. And I'm like, no, they're not here. So I give credit to my husband. Like, like I said, it always has to be a second parent to make sure that the kid is like, safe and safe
Oh,
and reasonably
yeah.
quiet in order
You're
to make this happen for
just
sure. I don't
not
know.
building a nuclear bomb in the garage or anything. So,
Also, that has been a concern lately, but
no,
we're
no.
working through it. Yeah,
Honestly, I
exactly.
think Caitlin from Kitty G, she just had her
Yes,
baby. Yeah,
I
and
am thrilled, and she got married. So
yeah,
she is like
I'm,
she's exactly proving, the stereotype wrong that like when she came back and she was away for a bit, but when she said she was
mhm.
coming back, she did, and I'm like, yes, I adore her. And I guess
Yes,
that's
she's
where the
really
thing
sweet.
too is that like I think it must be a bit interesting for you because I guess I was in BookTube, but I wasn't in the SFF sphere at the time. I was still like, it's funny. You can read old reviews where I'm like, I don't like science fiction books. It's like people find them on Goodreads and think it's hilarious from like 7 years ago. I was like, I don't know. I didn't think I liked the genre. Silly me. But the interesting thing though is that like I feel like you're part of this original group that I remember watching when I was trying to get into science fiction. I obsessively watched the original like BookTube SFF tag where it was like yourself and Caitlin and oh I'm gonna just blank on the names, of course, like Rachel from Collinati who still does do videos
Yeah, Rachel
and
and
Elizabeth, who I'm
Elizabeth, whom I
and I hate to be I was gonna say I'm gonna be naming all these names that no one can go check out their
yeah,
their I don't think I'll have their chance
miss
to
her to
take it
pieces.
down.
Let's just say there were a lot of. I guess I don't know. I maybe consider myself a second waiver because I started in at the end of 2013. So around that time, like 2013 to 2015, was when like the next bunch of folks started kind of turning up. And
Mhm.
Samantha from Thoughts on Tomes, she's
Yes,
still around.
yeah.
She just posted a video also talking about this very thing. How has BookTube changed over the years? Has
I
the
loved her video. I
community,
thought it was
yeah,
great. Yeah.
and to whatever degree BookTalk has supplanted BookTube. BookTube is sort of now kind of evolving to where the kind of content that you do on TikTok is just not now apparently what at least what she's finding on yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile video. Everyone should go
Yeah.
watch it. But like longer form content, like read-alongs and reading sprints and things of that nature. That is stuff that is becoming very popular apparently on BookTube. Um,
Yeah, I was hearing that too,
yeah,
and I'm kind of someone who like I often try to stick around the like 15-minute mark for BookTube videos, and I'm like, oh, should I do longer? But again, it's like I don't know, what the, what will be in the books. And again, like I have to remember this is just a season of life, having like really young kids and all that. But yeah, I loved her video because I think, and it makes a good point. It's I need to watch because I'm sure I know there's tons of people who love BookTube that also watch TikTok and things. So I don't want to be, yucking their yum. Because like I said, there's crossover, and you don't want to criticize what people like. But for me, I don't understand. Like I guess when I go to BookTube and go to videos, like I'm usually trying to first find new content, which again is why people tend to like my channel. It's just that, like here I've read 7 books, find something that appeals to them that maybe they haven't heard of. But then it's also the discussions. Like specifically when I go and like watch one of your reviews, it's like not only trying to figure out your opinion, but how, my own taste would compare, being like, okay, you didn't like this because of this aspect, but maybe I like that or something like that. And I guess like I find like with Book Talk, it's such a short like format that like I feel like it's just you kind of it reminds me a lot more of Instagram where it's like here's a pretty picture of a book and it's
yeah,
pretty,
yeah.
but like I
Well, I feel
I
like
don't know. Yeah.
each platform kind of now is sort of it has its own aesthetic.
I
And
think
so, yeah, it's the Bookstagram is for like all the the beautifully composed
yeah.
shots of books against artisanal decoration and what have you, and then Book Talk is for I don't know. I mean, maybe for I myself don't really have any experience creating for that kind of thing, but it does seem like it's a lot more immediate, and it does kind of, from what I hear, and people who follow it a little more closely than I do, it is a kind of a community that is starting. It has a really bad habit of kind of just sort of promoting certain very high profile popular things sort of at the expense of other stuff, and so it's like you get the Colleen Hoover fans, and then it's kind of hard to find anyone else. So I mean, I don't really know. I've thought about, well, do I want to go on there and try to like push adult science fiction to, and maybe someone is there to do it, and I know some people are trying to do it, but perhaps I'm not that guy, because I feel comfortable on my channel,
Yeah.
doing what I do the way I do it, even though I don't even do things the way conventionally, people do it on other BookTube channels. But I
Yeah.
feel like it's me, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's what my channel needs to be. It's like I needs to be a sincere expression of who I am.
Yeah.
That's
No, I agree, and that's honestly why I said this. I felt like was the right, you're the right guest for this live stream. Is that while we don't even necessarily do things the same way, I think we both feel very authentic to what we're doing, and we've had lots of talks offline about, exactly like kind of it's that balance between trying to appease the algorithm gods to a degree, because who doesn't want to have an audience to speak to? It's the community, the discussions, things that we love, but also not being inauthentic. Like I said, the day that you start like, yeah, like if I see the TikTok from you where you're like dancing around holding like necromancer to like or not, or neuromancer and exactly, and like cracking the 100K
Can't do
on
a very good
TikTok.
robot dance. I mean, even though I am a child of the '80s, I never
I
learned how
say
to.
that, but your video would actually probably do really well. But it's just deciding, it's kind of how you want to grow it and things. And even, I mean, I could say in this live chat, I hopefully only have friends here, but like the number of times I get a comment at least once a week on my video saying, "Oh, subscribed," and then you start talking about diverse books, so I unsubscribed, and it's just like I could have had that subscriber, but did I, at what level? So that's where I kind of think, it's like I've grown my channel to this point, but hopefully I've grown it with an audience that wants the same diverse, open community, and like they want the same things from the book community that I do. And it's like I could hide some of my beliefs maybe to try to, fish out a larger net of subscribers, but
Well, I mean,
you
it's like,
know,
but at the end of the day, it's sort of like, is it quantity or quality? I mean,
yeah,
folks like that, everyone has a right to be who they are, I suppose. People who have those kinds of issues say, like if you don't like to, if you come on my channel and it upsets you that I talk about a book written by a black person or a queer person or what have you, you have problems that aren't really to do with books.
that's a
Okay.
good way to put it.
And it's not an issue that I can solve. And I'm sorry about that. I mean, I wish you well on your journey in life, but at the end of the day, I'm not really gonna not talk about stuff that is worth talking on its merits just because you think you have a very narrow definition of what actually is capable of having merits.
Yeah,
And so being upset about things like diversity and feeling threatened by that, and I do feel like I feel like there are kind of dark areas of the internet that have encouraged that sort of thing in people, and that kind of intellectual curiosity followed by, I just want to put myself in a silo. And but like I said, that is these are choices that and folks have to make, and they're on their own little travels in life, and you can't really change that. I mean, you
yeah.
can, I mean, you can, well, you can set an example by being you, right? But you can't make them be ready for something they're not ready for.
Thanks, Crystal. Appreciate you popping by. It's great to see so many friends on here. Yeah, no, I think that's such a good way to think about it. And especially, I would say as I moved into, and this is actually weird to say that like people have such an idea that the horror community is like, oh, you like these creepy, messed up books. But I would say the horror community has been some of the kindest, warmest people I've known, and I really didn't start to get negative comments on videos until I started going into science fiction and fantasy. And that was when I started getting like the nasty comments on video. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to be like, oh, poor me. Like, I definitely get far more kind comments than negative. Um, but definitely that's where I get the ones where people are like, "Oh," like I've gotten like some funny ones. Like even someone, like they said in one video, they're like, "Oh, I noticed that you read more male authors than female authors. Is that because you understand that males have bigger brains that are smarter?" And I'm just like you read those comments, you're like, "Am I being trolled?"
Uh,
like
yeah,
please
I,
tell me I'm being trolled. It's like,
but my friend, you right there are kind of disproving that assertion, aren't you? That's
yeah, it's like all right,
possibly, yeah. Yeah, the nice thing about it is that those folks are very rare,
yeah,
right?
and that's the thing.
It's
Yeah,
very very rare, and no, I mean, and even someone to address one of the comments here, he's like, no, I mean, there's certainly what whoever you subscribe to, there's no guarantee you'll like any or all of their content,
yeah,
and you don't have to, and that's fine. But as long as
yeah,
it's but never hesitate to if you engage on an intellectual level,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I kind of figure, there are channels that I subscribe to where I'm not really interested in every single video they put up, and so I watch the ones that I think will interest me, and I just kind of don't bother with the others.
yeah.
That's that, and that saves time in my day.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I've had this conversation with other friends that really feel that like responsibility to like hold, uplift their friends' channels, things like that. And don't get me wrong, like I will if I'm on there and remember, I'll like thumbs up your videos, things like that. But like I would think like one person's not responsible for building anyone else's career or this or that. Like even like my husband, like I'm always tickled pink when he like randomly watches a video of mine and things like that. Like it's at the end of the day, it's like it's exactly if he's gonna sit down and relax and watch a video on YouTube, it probably is gonna be like a gaming video or something like that that's like more to his taste. And so, it's the same thing. Like I have so many friends, and I do hopefully, if I know we have friends watching that have creative channels themselves, and I try to watch your videos and I try to comment and things like that, but also like exactly it's kind of we all do what we can, but it's still within balance. And exactly. And sometimes, if you put out like, I don't know what you put out, Thomas, but like if you put out like a xylophone, actually, who am I kidding? If you like put him a video of you playing the xylophone, I would totally watch that. But I was gonna say, I'm just planning all your TikTok content. Here we
I
go.
shall now review this book through the medium of interpretive dance.
Oh my gosh, this is how we're gonna get you to 20K. This is it. I was gonna say we found it right there. But that's
That's
yeah, good.
how it's going to work
That's
exactly.
so
Yeah.
funny. But it's definitely see it. And even with negative comments, like, and that's the thing is like the audience is so nice. Like even like it was like probably a couple months ago, I got someone who um criticize the way I described, and I don't really want to get into specifics. It's just a boring story in the details. But they criticize how I described this one book. And at first I was like, oh, it's like they're criticizing. And I was like, no, there's actually a valid point. So I replied back and I was like, oh, I didn't think about this. I came from this perspective. Like they were talking about a different culture. And I was like, well, this isn't really taught in Canada. I wasn't aware of that. And I actually gave them a pretty lengthy response. And then like a day later, they sent me like a follow up message. They're like, I am so sorry. I never comment on videos. Like, I just was having a bad day. I didn't mean to criticize you. And I was like, I thought it was a valid point. Like I wasn't like mad at you either. And so I was showing like my husband, it's like,
Mhm.
this is like,
Well, I mean, that's
me.
nice of them, I
So
guess. Yeah.
exactly. So if that was like the most critical, like, because I'd say I get,
Thanks
you
for
kind of get the
caution.
trolly comments that you can tell they're just like
Yeah.
out to throw mud. But when I
Mhm.
actually do get like a valid comment from someone who seems to actually watch some content and has exactly a criticism, like, oh sure,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I probably think if I got more perhaps negative or nasty snide comments maybe in my channel's youth, because I was still kind of stumbling along. And then there was that whole kind of in the science fiction community. Those of you who know about it, and if you don't know about it, just consider yourself fortunate. I'm not going to go into details, but there was the whole sad puppy controversy,
yeah,
and I made some commentary on that, and their little clique came around, and weren't very pleased, and that just kind of gave me, in certain cases, just a nice list of people to block. Because at the end of the day, there's only you got to go on and live your life.
yeah,
But no, I feel like, generally speaking, I think the BookTube community is maybe better and friendlier than many communities on YouTube, say gaming, for example, simply
yeah,
because readers tend to be people who are interested in ideas, and tend to be they like to engage their intellect, right? And even
yeah,
if they disagree with you, I've very most of my disagreements are people who just come out like, well, no, I actually kind of like this because da 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 da, right? And it's just a
yeah.
totally cool comment, and they're
Yeah,
not
and I've seen that. Like like I
one
watched one of your
thing.
negative reviews, and the person was like, "I actually like the book," but they weren't mad at your negative review, and you in turn didn't go like, "Well, you're stupid for liking this book, burn."
Well, I
And
I
it's
never usually, I need to do that. It's like this old art of war, right? Never
yeah,
interrupt me when they're making a mistake. No, it's well,
uh,
the comments on my Stranger in a Strange Land video can occasionally get pretty nasty because some old
yeah,
Heinlein disciple will show up, and I love those because they're always, they're always, they follow a distinct pattern. The guy will show up, he will very huffily declare that I didn't get the book, and then he will offer his interpretation of the book. And every single one of these is like a completely different interpretation. And in fact, like within a day of each other, I had two guys came out like, you didn't understand the book because, and each of their interpretations literally like negated the other, right? They were like opposite interpretations. One guy said that it was this, sensitive and very, detailed and thoughtful exegesis of the Bible, and really, and the other guy was like, this book is just all about how religion, but especially Christianity, is just a bunch of big crock of crap, right? And I'm just like, oh, you guys should get together and talk this out amongst yourselves. Leave me out of it. But thanks for watching anyway.
yeah. I think I suspect you agree with that, Joseph, too. I would say definitely that reading has, for me at least, really increased my capacity for empathy, or at least just understanding other people's perspectives, because Yeah, like I have a limited perspective. I always say like
Mhm.
like white Canadian girl from like Bumpkins, like, Canada and all that. So, definitely, it's like,
Mhm.
just seeing, yeah, different perspectives. So there's a lot of, even it's interesting. Like I just actually did a reread of Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie with my book club.
Okay.
And the first time I read it was, even I don't even want to admit it, like it wasn't even that long ago, maybe 5 years. And I remember that when I first read it, of course, if anyone's not familiar, the book uses only the she gender pronouns throughout the book. And the first time I read it, I remember it being like really confusing. And I spent like a good chunk of the book just trying to gender everyone and being like, oh, this person has a beard, they're actually male. And it was like very distracting because I was constantly trying to do this and it was very important within my reading experience. Well, now having read so much more and having a better understanding of gender fluidity and things like that, I did notice that like reading it this time, like it was a piece of the story. It's interesting, but
Mhm.
honestly, it wasn't even that interesting of the story. The fact that the main character doesn't know how to gender people correctly, or or use their own cultural understanding of it. So it's just interesting again, like for me, as I've grown, that
Yeah.
it's just kind of just kind of realizing the cultural
Mhm.
structures around gender. And
A
so I was
lot
like,
of
oh, exactly. I was like, look how I've grown. I'm so proud of me.
yeah, there are a great many things that you will find your views will change because you're a different person than you were 10, 20 years ago. And one little adventure that I'm going through right now is I talked about my legacy website, and I'm in the process of sort of like transferring all that content over now to the new domain, which to match
Mhm.
my channel, sff180.com. And a lot of these older books, many of them I've set aside and I've started rereading them. And because there are some of those old reviews, I'm like, I can look at it and go, yeah, I remember this pretty clearly. I'm comfortable with my opinion here. I don't feel like it would change. And that's maybe like a little more than half of them. But others, I'm kind of going back and saying, I was young and maybe I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't in the right headspace for it because I feel like maybe I wasn't fair to this one. And I'll go back and I'll reread it and I'll be like, oh no, I was totally fair. Or I'll be like, oh, I'm now getting something new out of this that I didn't notice originally, I didn't see originally, or wasn't ready for, couldn't really process. I didn't have the tools to grasp what the author was doing. I didn't have the knowledge base. And so sometimes it's been different. So I've been slowly like going through some of the older books and occasionally just doing some real revisions on these reviews and getting those up on the new domain. And that's actually been a fun exercise because I'm
Nice.
learning about myself.
Yeah.
And also want to follow up on what Jesse's comment here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Let's bring that out.
agree with you because he says I in my reviewing I like to follow one of my I've always talked about my biggest influence was Roger Ebert, because Roger Ebert was somebody who was like a walking encyclopedia of cinema, but he wasn't a movie snob. He was a populist. He's, one of the people who I think made criticism accessible to a mass audience with a TV show with Gene Siskel, where they're just two guys talking about movies. And it like took criticism and reviewing out of this sort of ivory tower that people maybe thought that it was just intellectual snobs. And no, it's just a couple of guys and they're talking about movies, just like we do at work at in the break room. And so he combined
Yeah.
those two qualities. Like he could be wonderfully like deeply analytical. Like he can take movies apart shot by shot and just explain how they work. But then he can also goof on something like Tomb Raider or some dumb very commercial movie and love that as well. And his philosophy always was it's whether you like something or hate something. Now, say and you really don't like a book or a movie or whatever it is you're reviewing, and it doesn't matter. You can say whatever you want. Go right ahead. I mean, just give something a scathing review if that's necessary. But still, you got to remember that somewhere out there is going to be that person who's that book is for. And your job as a reviewer is you've still got to be informative enough and entertaining enough to where that person can watch your review, read your review, and whatever you say, you know, they still need to be able to say, yeah, sounds like based on what you're describing, I'd really like that. And if you can do that, you've done your job. It's not important that you be agreed with as a reviewer. It's simply important that you communicate honestly and with great clarity what works for you, what doesn't.
Yeah.
Because the job of a reviewer is, you're not grading papers. You're not an English professor. You're a travel guide. you know,
It,
because that's, reviewing is when you read. Reading, and what is reading? It's you're not just taking data in through your eyeballs. It's a journey, right?
yeah,
And my job as a reviewer is I've got to tell you about this journey that I just went on and what I got out of it, what I liked, what was fun, what wasn't, what didn't work. And then at the end, I have to bring you back home. And then based on that, you've got to be able to decide if that's the journey for you, whether it was for me or not. And
yeah,
that's kind of what it's about. It's not just marking down papers. It's a deeper thing.
yeah. Oh, exactly. I don't think I necessarily have like the skill of like I love like yeah, you really put together some like great like in-depth reviews. But I think like, the basis of what I try to do with my own like I hate to say with reviews, even like I almost feel like a lot of times I'm giving more reaction to a book. And it's very much like I always try to preface it like being like exactly that. It's like my personal reaction. And I remember there was this whole wave of like discussion videos that went around BookTube years ago about like, can you have like objective versus subjective content of like, can you actually, you know, critically say like this book is objectively good or bad and obviously there is to a degree like I have called out certain books on just having truly problematic content that I couldn't look past and flat out said I cannot recommend this or based off of that. But then on the flip side, like there's times where I've been like, hey, this book is slow paced gothic with zero plot and this. And I'll be like, I hate all of those things. This book is not for me. And then I've had people in the comments saying, oh, I love slow paced gothic, etc., etc. Pick up the book, love it, and say thank you for that review. So I try to exactly always focus around not necessarily just what's what's best for the book. Sorry, I'm distracted here. I might need to check on my kid. Can you hold the conversation for 1 second? Go talk about things. I'll be right
Sure,
back.
that's fine. Okay, we're going to do a kid check. My kids are over there. They're napping on the floor amongst their bones. So let's see. Let me take some of these questions while we're waiting for Rachel. As a reviewer, how do you balance looking at a book objectively versus what speaks to you and your own personal preferences and biases? Says Joseph. Okay. I would say that I mean, for the most part, yes, a review is by definition sort of an opinion piece. So you are kind of conveying your taste and your personal preferences, but there can be mistakes. There can be objective errors with storytelling. Sometimes they get through. I think in a lot of cases they won't get through simply because a beta reader or an editor or an agent or somebody vetting the manuscript will, look at it and say, yes, but Joe, you can't have, helicopters in the 12th century. They didn't have, those weren't real. Oh, I'm so, okay. And you have to rewrite that. But so if they're like clear mistakes, right? I mean, now that's an exaggerated example, but, there are errors, there are issues in story logic, where you can look at a situation and say I that simply would not be how those events unfold. If it's just patently unbelievable and unsatisfying, there is, I think, something objectively wrong perhaps with the mechanics of the story at that point.
Yeah. No, I
but,
fully
but
agree
in
with
many
that.
cases what I tend to rarely find that though in published fiction. Sometimes I do. I mean, and in older science fiction, especially, you find quite a lot of it there. But newer books, I think, they're probably more carefully edited and vetted.
Yeah.
Writers these days use a whole army of alpha readers and beta readers and sensitivity readers and what have you. And so many situations now in newer books, I find, are simply whether or not just I the writer connected, they and I just sort of meshed, right,
Yeah.
with the story, as opposed to being some just kind of an objective error.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. Sorry about the interruption. My kid was just calling. So, and I didn't have my phone near me because I was going to be like, husband, deal with the kid. But,
No, that's okay. Well, the floor is
yeah.
now entirely yours. I'm
Oh,
done
I know.
yammering. No more.
No, I love that because I think that's yeah, it's constantly a discussion of like how to yeah, like what counts as reviewing things like that. And I know even within BookTube, again going back to like our history, like there's a long going conversations that like individual book reviews are dead on the YouTube and things like that. And I think like you've always been one who's really held to that format. And I think like I imagine like you probably have some videos that have actually perhaps they don't blow up the minute that you post certain review videos, but over time I think you have what they call evergreen content where you have people coming back to them. Because I know when I search for a book, like if I search, I'm trying to think like Ninth House book review or Dead Silence book review, those kind of things. Or Dead Space, which one I don't know whichever the book is.
No,
It was
I think
clearly
both.
memorable.
Yeah.
Often your review is in like the top 3 that comes up. So,
Well,
you know,
I do find that, yeah, just the reviews do tend to have greater longevity. You're right; they're like a slow burn, and if you do, the only, I guess, the reason why I've done, just like single book review videos is because that's a byproduct of just how I kind of got trained to think about doing it. Because writing reviews, I come from a written
yeah.
review background, and so that's just. Although I am planning more kind of themed videos, I'm going to start experimenting next year with. Somewhere like I'll focus on maybe perhaps a particular theme or concept and say like, and here are 4 books that, or 3 books that do this, or so I'm going to start kind of playing around with that. Um, but yeah, I don't really look at my old videos very often or the analytics on them, and then I'll just be flipping through, Creator Studio, and then it'll be like, oh my God, just I didn't know that my Born review had just gotten like some stupid number of views, but that had to build over what, like 4 or 5 years. So,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, yeah, for me, a couple of my top videos. One is like my top 10 horror. Not surprisingly, I have another space opera recommendations that is blown up, and I don't like it because it's one of these things where it's like I hadn't read enough space opera, so it was just here's me recommending the space opera I've read so far, and so I get 1,000 comments saying, "Where's this classic? Where's this classic?" And I'm like, I haven't read it yet, or at the time I hadn't read it. And then one of my most popular videos is a one-off I did for Valentine's Day where I talked about dark, dark erotic romance books. And I did one video on that. It's one of my most watched videos. It has very few comments, not surprisingly, because people watch it, but they don't want to admit that they were there.
oh,
And I've gotten a lot of subscribers from it who then comment on my other videos saying, "When's some more erotic content coming?"
that's interesting.
It's a weird little like blip
Well,
on my channel.
that's worth hearing about, actually, because I've been toying with the idea of doing an anti Valentine's Day video,
Oh, I already have
because
one
I've got
ready
all
to go.
kinds. Yeah, because I've got all kinds of like retro vintage science fiction books published at a time, let's just say, when sexual politics were just a bit more problematic than they are
Ooh,
today.
I think you have to do that video.
And I feel like it would just be an awesomely hilarious topic for a video. I mean, it will require me to read the books, but screw it. I mean, I've subjected myself to worse. So yeah, I think that probably, that does seem to be, that's a catalyst for good channel growth too. You want to talk about it, like, how quickly we were able to get to 20,000. I feel like, that it does, a lot of it does rely upon those like just wonderful dumb luck viral
Yeah,
videos, right? Something,
yeah,
and you'll just kind of be going along and getting the typical number of views, and then suddenly out of the blue, you'll post something, and for whatever crazy reason, it'll get 80 or 90 or 100,000 views, and you never have any idea why.
yeah.
But that is what, I've never quite had a video do that. I've never really had just one that blew up that way. But but I feel, but the channels that have really had those wonderful lucky growth spurts were the ones where just like they got a sweet spot, and something that they posted ended up getting, like just 6 figures in the views, and that was what kind of, helped them to take off. So it's just not really a thing I think that you can predict or control. You just
Yeah, like
have
there's
to
some
keep doing
things
the content you love.
I have found like YouTube does like certain things. Like people hopefully aren't annoyed at my channel the number of top 10 end of the year videos I've done just because something about top 10 and it does decent at least. Like there's something people are like, okay, here's the best and or want to kind of see those, something about listicles people like. But yeah, exactly. Like even my son was little. I remember like I was kind of barely filming. He was taking short little naps, and I remember he like took a nap. My hair wasn't even washed. Like I like no makeup on, I don't think. And I remember just like being like, oh, I'm just gonna film like the scariest books I've ever read. And yeah, it was like under 10 minutes. So I don't even think it has ads on it or anything. It's like very tiny. And it's just like me, the thumbnails, me screaming at a thing of books, which now I've done like since then. And I feel like it's kind of like lost its novelty. But at the time, yeah, it was one of my best performing videos and did so well. And I kind of was like, geez, I wish I could like put on some like makeup or, brush my hair before this like video came out. And like the sound quality was bad because it was like storming outside. Like it's one
Oh,
of these things
wow.
that like I kind of like the, like the least prepared video where I'm just like, I'll just like throw this at the wall. Who cares? It'll just, it's something to put up on my channel in these like sleep
Mhm.
deprived days. And of course, that one did really well. And then I'm sure you've had it too, where like there are times that I've really put together a video being like, "Oh, this is gonna do really well." Like, I think I
Mhm.
have like a clever thumbnail or this or that, and like the video just tanks, and like you're like, "Okay,"
Yeah, yeah, and
you know?
that's always kind of sad.
Yeah.
No, I've although sometimes you can get some vindication on those because you'll come back years later and you'll find that it has slowly kind of ticked over time. But there were one like I did a video just on the history of black speculative
I remember
fiction,
that. Yeah.
and it really kind of I kind of thought this one might, and I didn't do it for that purpose, but I mean I
Oh,
did
no.
kind of feel like this one might very well jump out the gate because it really is kind of a
It was very
topic that,
topical, yeah.
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 But no, it just sort of grew slowly. But all the responses to it have been very gratifying, and so that was quite a relief to me because I'm making you make that kind of thing, always afraid that I'll not handle it properly, but so yeah, but so that was one that there was kind of like some long term vindication for. But you're right. I mean, it's the ones that you really hope are going to do great that just sort of sputter and then just some random whatever because like,
Yeah.
why the hell are you watching this for God's sake?
Exactly. And it's always like for me, always more than I guess specific views. Like I try not to look too much at my algorithm, but I still do check for comments on my videos. And so probably the worst I've had is like, when you post a video in like 6 hours ago, and I've had it where like even now, like where I'll like click on the video and be like, okay, it's like I'll respond to the comments that are up so far, and there's nothing, and then you're like, oh, maybe I messed up my posting schedule, maybe I forgot to post, and you're like, nope, it's been sitting there for 6 hours, like even and sometimes then it does better. Like my top 10 fantasy that I posted this week, I don't think I got a comment for the first 2 hours. And I was just like, okay, no one cares about fantasy on my channel. I got it. And then it's actually done better in the algorithm now. So I don't know. But
Yep,
yeah.
you can't predict it. You just gotta,
Yeah.
you put them out there in the world. They're your babies, and they just go on to have whatever life they have.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, so long. I'll make another one on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah. I know. That really is what it
You just
is.
keep popping them out.
It's up there. Yeah.
My poor husband's like, ugh.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
but it's always you get those nice comments and the good feedback, and it just it makes all the hours sitting in front of the editing suite with sore butt and sore thighs, just it makes it worthwhile.
yeah. And I mean, that's why, like, I joke, like, actually, like, I'm probably like the worst, like, YouTuber for someone who, like, and my husband pointed this out, like, for someone who has a visual platform, like, you at least do, like, transitions and things at times, and, like, you'll bring in, like, I literally, like, my live stream and my videos, like, virtually identical because it's just me sitting in front of my bookshelves, talking on
Well,
camera with,
if
like,
that's
minimal cuts as possible.
yeah, if that's what works
Yeah.
for you, I mean, it's working for
Yeah.
you, so why change it, right? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of came into this with all of this. I did do, I worked like through the 2000s. I was working in TV and film, and so like that kind of made me feel like, oh, I want everything to be slick and cool looking and all that. So yeah, so when I'm in front of the computer right here for like hour 7 on my anticipated video, adding the
Ugh.
little, thing to, okay, I got to put the book cover graphic in, and then I got to do the thing where it like rotates in and moves out, and I've been doing that for this is the 33rd book, and my eyes are glazing over, and I'm like, why, Thomas, why? But then you see the finished product, and you're like, well, that's why, I wanted to. So you just
Yeah.
got to kind of you take the good with the bad, and you just trust that it will all be worth the effort in the end.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's interesting. Yeah. Someone's talking about, if people go back and watch old videos, it's supposed to just like what's new. I always find it's the most like flattering thing when you have someone like every once in a while, you can see it in the comments if they take the time to actually like drop comments as they go through. Is you'll have someone you can see them like meticulously going through my backlist and like they're just like leaving comments on like older and older videos. It's like, oh, stop. Now I get like, some of my old stuff is pretty embarrassing. Have you ever like, I mean, like really like hidden or unlisted some of your old stuff? I'm torn between I
Hmm.
unlisted some that was painful, but I
Mhm.
kinda like keeping it up just to give people hope that, like, you can start out really campy and still somewhat do okay on
Yeah.
this platform.
Yeah, no, I've
Yeah,
taken down a few of the earlier videos.
yeah.
Not a great many, maybe only like just 2 or 3.
There we
Um,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the people make big. Well, I don't have a big intro, so
Yeah,
that's
I was gonna say you're good, no. I
I
was gonna
just
say
have
I
like
have,
this
like, nothing.
yeah, but it's yeah, yeah, people who do like a whole bunch of stuff before, hand, yeah, I'm getting impatient about that too, Jesse.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
But yeah, what was I going to say? One of the videos that I took down was one that was actually kind of a big video for me early on, but I think it quickly sort of wore out its usefulness, and it was one, frankly, that I really didn't like. I wasn't proud of it, and it was really getting actually some bad reactions because, well, it was my video where I tried to do an overview of Orson Scott Card's Ender series, certainly not all of them, but several of the books. And for one thing, I wasn't really ready to do this from a production standpoint. Like my channel had been up less than a month, and I decided to tackle this massive, you know, project. And so, and my equipment was breaking down because I wasn't really, entirely sure how to work it and all that kind of stuff. And I was not pleased. And then in addition to that, so from a quality, just production value standpoint, it's not up to the standards I want to have on my channel. So that was reason enough to take it down. But then it had also dated itself very quickly because I posted it. This would have been like the end of 2013. So like I said, it's one of my first 10 videos that I ever did. I spent a lot of time talking about, at the very beginning of the video, talking about Orson Scott Card, who is notorious for being homophobic,
Yeah.
which is just part of his religious background. But he kind of gets in people's faces about it. So I mean, nobody would do that if he didn't. But anyway, point is, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of the video talking about that only because at that time it
Hmm.
was pertinent. There was a big controversy in social media and on the internet that Orson Scott Card had been, attached to write a Superman series for DC Comics. And so there were a lot of people. It was like a huge argument online about whether or not he was a suitable writer to take on that character who is supposed to represent good values and all this kind of. So I thought I would address some of that, and I went into this whole thing about how death of the creator, right, and how you can disagree with a person's views and still appreciate their art and like separate the two, and that's a personal. But I kind of ramble on about it. And so it was relevant then. It was like one of those things
Hmm.
that was relevant that week.
Yeah.
But then the video was up for years. And so somebody coming to it 4 or 5 years later is going to be like, why the hell is this idiot spending the first 7.5 minutes of this video, banging on about, Card the homophobe? I just want to hear about the book. And so it actually hurt the video long term, which taught me
Yeah.
kind of a lesson about like how good or not good it is to be timely about certain things. In retrospect, what I could have done, I feel like, was just done my own video talking about that subject
Right.
and made it not part of the Ender series video.
Right, because the hard
That
part is
instead of-
I seemingly a lot of the people going to find that video now are going to be people who are like, oh, I want to go through his work and who
Yeah,
have already decided that they don't care for whatever reason about,
yeah, and
him
so
as an
it
artist and
so it was
stuff.
just
Yeah.
this big thing that was a mess and it was in the way, and it just wasn't anything that I was proud. So that's an example of one I got rid of.
Yeah.
And I'll be talking about the Ender books again because I'll be doing them as part of my reading the Hugo's series, and so there's a good excuse to do it anyway. But so yeah, I've been very harshly critical about some of my early content.
Yeah, Michael's chiming in. He has a similar experience with card that, yeah, it's always, figuring out how much to talk about that or not within his work. And I had a video where I reread Ender, which I think I read right after high school. I read it. And I found the book to be just okay. And it was actually before I was even aware about him as an author. And then I wanted to reread it since it's such a BookTube darling. It's such a beloved book to see if my feelings had changed. But the problem is, I still find it to be just okay. And I think you actually really like it as like just a novel outside of the author himself. But basically, the problem is with that video is I wanted to be like, I found this book just okay. But I felt like I not only had to address his homophobia, but to address that I knew his homophobia, and this homophobia wasn't why I was disliking the book, because I didn't want an audience to go in saying, "Oh, I didn't like the book because I didn't like the author," and trying to say like I can do both. Like I can separate that, and I can still not like the book regardless of my feelings toward the author. And so I tried to do it succinctly on camera, and it's still like, again, it's one of my most watched videos of the last year, or I think it was last year, maybe in January. And yeah, I still get constant comments being like, you hated the book because of stuff, Card, or like your discussion of Card isn't relevant to your book review. And I'm just like, I don't know. And like, I keep being like,
You get that same
know.
kind of reaction when you're talking
Yeah.
about Lovecraft, right?
Yeah.
And just there are just these
Yeah.
authors who are controversial
Yeah.
figures. It is a fact. And so and how you address that, and then that's an all yeah, that's again, it's its own topic, and
Yeah.
so I feel like the degree to which you as a reader are willing to separate art from artists, that this is a thing that we can only deal, with and judge ourselves personally. I mean, we can only make that decision for ourselves based on our own conscience, and I don't think we can really impose that on anyone else. No, like, you can't. I think it's wrong to try to guilt people about it. At the end, I mean, it's fine to give people information that they could find useful, but the decision should be theirs. I, like you say, to this day, I will, happily admit that I dearly freaking love reading H.P. Lovecraft stories. I love everything about his work. Especially love the things about it that most other people hate. That florid, verbose, antiquarian prose of his. It's very busy and dense, but it just sort of like it immerses you in his brain, right? Love all of that. I think he's famous because I think he legitimately did write great horror fiction. Um, yeah, and he's a scumbag, racist, vile human being, a guy that I probably would not have wanted to like speak to in person for more than a minute. It's who he was. I can make that decision for myself, that I can sit there and read his stories and still, say, yes, I like this. It's what it is, and I know exactly who he was. But someone else just not wanting to have anything to do with him, or somebody not caring, or otherwise, that's a choice. That's your choice, and I respect it just as much. Rachel, I think you're muted. You're still muted.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I was saying, I know we're getting to the hour mark, but before we wrap this up, maybe I guess just going back to our
Oh yeah,
channel.
Kaiju, Dan Simmons. Good lord. I mean,
Oh,
great writer, massive jerk.
yeah, I've been starting to read through his books, and I've been like almost not wanting to go into like a deep dive of like everything that he's done. Because I'm like, it's almost like I almost don't want to know, because I've been, again, like, especially as a horror reviewer, like the Terror, Summer of Night, like there was a lot of really iconic books that I wanted to have, just because there's so many people that, are saying, oh, is this book like this? And you want to compare. And I'm like, well, I need to know what this is all about. But yeah, I'm always like, oh gosh. Anyway, what I wanted to say before we have to wrap up is I'd love to hear, I guess, from people in the comments. Sorry, I think you've asked a few times about Dean
Dean
Koontz. I've read
Koontz.
like one or two of his books. I don't have, yeah, I haven't read much of him. I know you've commented a few times on my channels with that.
Hmm.
But I guess I'd love to hear from everyone in the comments that are still sticking around. What would you like to see, I guess, from my channel in terms of videos, topic ideas, things like that? And because Thomas is here too, if you want to give him any ideas for things. I know I'd love some more top tens from Thomas, because, like I said, I think the Uger
Those are so
the
hard. They're
that's the
so
thing. They're just subjective. You put a list
hard.
together, you film it, and then you stick it on the internet and immediately
Yeah,
regret your rankings. That is how you
yeah,
do a
that's
top 10 video.
I guess I'll just have to, like, bite the bullet. You're right,
Yeah.
Rachel. I did
Yeah.
do that one favorites video when I was doing my 20th anniversary, so, yes, I did that just for you, as a matter of fact.
There you go. I was
And I was
so
like,
happy about
"Whoa."
that. And literally that would became, if you look at my, like what I read this year, I read several of your favorites. I read 52 Street Station, The Scar
Ah,
is on my list
yes.
for next year. I read
Mhm,
Book of the New Sun. I think, yeah, Lord of the Rings is due for a reread. So here we
mhm.
go. So yeah. Let's see Thomas do more interviews with authors. I agree. I, for whatever reason, have never been comfortable with the idea of doing interviews. I want you to do interviews with authors. I love watching them. I don't want to do them. So that's all you.
Yeah, it looks like they're gonna be having me do at least one every year at ArmadilloCon now, so I've been roped into
Nice.
that. But I'm trying to also arrange one early in the year. I can't say anything, but if I manage to land it, it would be very exciting. So,
I am
um,
happy to oblige Michael with his with his
mhm.
reading
Yeah,
assigned reading for myself.
Spiral Worlds, yes, boy, that was a tragic thing, wasn't it? I mean, that was just a blight. That ruined so many people's that broke so many hearts, Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Ooh, I love Velvet's idea for me to update my scariest reads of all time list.
Oh, see,
And
there
as a
you
bonus,
go.
I might even brush my hair for the sequel.
There you go. Yeah, the scary. Yeah, there you are. There you are.
There we go. I love that. That'd be fun to do, because definitely I found some. The hard part is like, I don't know if like my new list will be as so much scary as like I've moved on to like just messed up books. It's like
Oh,
my new thing. Yeah.
messed up books, you say? Messed up books. Yes.
That is what I need to get to.
There you
Yes.
are. Yeah, boy, I tell you. Um, you see, Joseph wants to know about podcasts.
Yeah.
I haven't yet, but I'd like to because one of the books on my anticipated horror list for next year, "The Death of Sleep," I believe it's called, apparently is adapted from a podcast.
Oh, there's a few of those. I know Rabbits is the
Yeah,
same thing. So,
yeah. Although the one that's really popular, I tried listening to Welcome to Night Vale,
ah,
and
yes.
I hated it.
Well, it's kind of, isn't it like
I'm
cute? I have
sorry,
still
I
have
just
to watch.
it just did
You're
not.
probably like people in the comments are probably dying. I know
I
it's so
know.
beloved.
I'm sorry. Send me. I'm sorry, everyone. I am so sorry
Don't
if
blame
you're
me. I
looking for
don't know.
Night
Yeah,
Vale
I was gonna
fan.
say ignore Thomas. I don't know him. No, I'm kidding.
If you're a Night Vale fan, I am so sorry. It just did not land for me. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. But yeah, I'm interested in checking out more for sure. Yeah, definitely, Joseph.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad to hear that messed up book list is also on board. That basically, if anyone missed it, my top 10 dark fiction backlist is basically just like I think 7 out of the 10 books are just really messed up. Like it's weird when you have some like certain themes on camera and you're trying to like film these videos hoping that like you won't get flagged by YouTube. I've had like multiple videos get like marked for like monetization till they like demonetization till they're like, oh, okay, yeah, she's just talking
Really?
about books.
Oh,
Just for like
wow.
if you think about what I talk about on camera, like I try to like
Yeah, I mean,
reference
you're just
things.
sort of like, I love cannibalism. It's a
Exactly.
it's like it's so original.
I have a
A
video
little
coming early next year where I definitely have some chicken bones on camera.
okay.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Well, black tapes noted, Mike.
That one actually I've watched
Yeah,
you just listen to the first
yeah.
season. That is excellent. It's really
Noted.
well
And I
produced. So
know
I
that,
think
like,
yeah.
Archive 81, I watched the Netflix version, so I should maybe, listen to the podcast since the Netflix version is not continuing. So maybe I'll, a lot of people say that the podcast is better. So here's a lot of that. Talk about the, like, scariest books ever read, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, I will read more Adam Roberts. In fact, I've got,
Yes.
2 coming up in January that I'm catching up with. The scariest book I've ever read, like in terms of this, like I
Yeah, this
lost
I want to
sleep,
know. Yeah.
was not a horror novel. It was a work of true crime, and it is by the guy who is now to this day still my favorite true crime author. It's a guy named Harold Schechter,
Okay. Don't
and
think I
he
know.
writes historical true crime. So it's not like here's what happened a year ago. He doesn't talk about Jeffrey Dahmer or anything like that. He talks about like people from 80, 90, 100 years ago. And not quite that old, but his first book was about Ed Gein, and it's called Deviant, and it is just this journalistic but very narrative account of Edward Gein, right? And if you don't know who Ed Gein was, he was the inspiration for Norman Bates,
Oh gosh.
and also the inspiration for Leatherface.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so he if and he was from Wisconsin, so I don't know what it is about all you northerners that are just into
Hey,
heavy.
I'm above the borderline. We're
Yeah,
above crazy.
but Harold Schechter just has a way of
Yeah.
spinning a true
Yeah.
story, and just the clinical descriptions of what was found in Ed Gein's house.
Hmm.
I could not sleep. I
Yeah.
could not sleep. I mean, I
Oh,
just couldn't go to sleep. It was like, so because it was just so straightforward,
yeah.
my friend.
And
It's just
yeah.
like, good lord, and just that a human being could, it was. So that's it. A lot of horror fiction has certainly been messed up, but mostly what I get out of horror fiction, really good horror fiction, is the kind that just makes me think about its themes. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's dark, it's disturbing, it's kind of like, "Ugh," but mostly it's like, but this is really saying something about either, human condition or whatever, the author's trying to get at,
No,
Um,
I totally agree, and that's what I think I've seen missing, like, some of the Tor Nightfire titles that I've been really critical of this year, like, to me, they miss the point of horror that they're just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have this, like, scary thing happen and follow the horror tropes," and it's like, where's the social commentary that's underneath? And that's not a new thing, like, you read books like Rosemary's Baby was, like, a commentary on, like, so many things, like, back in the day, like, I really think people miss that, like, horror's been used for like I said, and people think it's recent, people think it's something very very recent that publishing's doing, but really it's been the core. And I totally relate what you're saying with true crime. I think I've really fallen back down the rabbit hole this last year, and probably for the reason that like yeah, I don't really go to horror books for the scares anymore. So I'm much more likely to be scared by a nonfiction or like nonfiction true crime book. And I think, yeah, it's partially because I know it's based off real events. And I know it's like it's hard for me to just when you can only suspend your disbelief so much when you know something's fiction. And then yeah, it's just the fact like it's horribly real and dark. Like with I'll Be Gone in the Dark, I remember reading that book, and it was all like a lot of like abduction stories and invasions, or like specific invasion stories. And I remember being terrified. And then I remember like I was like, oh, I can only read this when my husband's home. Like I'll feel better if he's in the house. And then you got to the next chapter where he starts, the serial killer starts actually going to homes when both
And
these.
he kills the husband first.
I know, and I was like, well, now I can't read this at all. And it
There
was
you go.
awful. And then
What
I
you need are a
probably
couple of loud dogs.
yeah. And I don't think you do as much audio, but I am open on my channel. Part of the way I read so much is because I do some audio. And forgive me for people who've watched all my videos. I know I've mentioned this at least once on camera, but this last year I did a read through of the Ted Bundy um, book. That is basically it's the final tapes that were recorded. There was journalists who went in when he was on death row, and they had him do as close as he could to a confession. He never truly confessed in those tapes, but kind of said, "Oh, what do you think the serial killer would have done? Why would he be motivated this way?" And like Ted Bundy walked them through those steps, like by saying, "Oh," as he just talked about in third person to kind of separate himself. But anyway, long story short, I did that on audio, and my audiobook was messed up, so I would be on Discord talking to my friends on Patreon, and all of a sudden, Ted Bundy, the audiobook would just start playing random. So I had like, I'd talk to my friends, and all of a sudden it was like da
Nice.
da da, kill, 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 and I'm like, oh my gosh, like who's in this closed patron
Ghost in the
voice chat?
Machine. Yeah.
And it happened to me
Yikes.
multiple times where like I did not press play and it just started auto playing itself, and I've
That's
only
even
had that with
creepier
one
than the
book.
stories you hear from
Yeah.
people who say that, like, their Alexa will just, like, randomly laugh or something, make some creepy
Oh,
sound or
yeah.
yeah, boy, that's yikes.
Although there's nothing creepier than baby monitors, I will say. There are
Uh,
so many times where
ooh,
like
yeah.
yeah, like those are the things of horror. I
Mhm.
know Anya Allburn did an amazing short story on those terrible video monitors. They're the worst.
Yeah. Lee
Yeah.
wants to know about in-depth series reviews. I'm gonna try to experiment with at least one next year because that is an
Yeah.
idea that I've thought of and I'd like to do.
That'd be nice. I'd
Yeah.
have to find the right series for me. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I find I know I did that somewhat to a degree with The Expanse. It takes
Mhm.
a special series for me to feel like I have enough to go
Mhm.
through because I've leaned towards like more short, again, more reactions versus like what I'd call true
Mhm.
reviews. So
Mhm.
it's something I'd have to kind of find my way back to. I think I've kind of gotten into like exactly like the here's quickly everything I read, which really doesn't allow for the time I'd like to sometimes discuss things.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
we'll look at these last few. So yeah, top 10 and what you predict for future classics. That'd be
Oh,
interesting to
that's
see.
an interesting
I
idea.
could see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. I could see us both doing and seeing what comes
Mhm.
out of it. Kind of what
Yeah.
holds up the test of time.
Yeah, that would be, that would be a challenge, actually.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll have to think about that because I do find like, especially again, and given the amount that I read, that there definitely are
Mhm.
books where there's certain books I have to go back on Goodreads to check if I read them a couple years ago, and, like, that's not
Mhm.
a good sign. And I was like it's embarrassing to admit, but literally I was like even this year, like, I was like, "Did I read Upgrade by Blake Crouch?" It just won my book club, pick for next February, and I was like, "I think I read that this year," and I was like, "Oh, I did that." Then I looked at my review, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I don't remember reading it." Yeah, it didn't connect with me well. Let's see. Yeah, most disturbing book you've ever read. I says, yeah, depends on my mood. What I'd say for that. Disturbing. I mean, Psycho was up there.
Mhm.
Psycho was a good one. Although, like Lolita,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
really
I
different
still
ways.
haven't
My darkness.
seen the film, of course, the Stanley Kubrick
Oh,
movie,
I
but
feel like that's worse to see the film.
yes, sent,
Yeah,
but I haven't, yeah, I haven't
yeah,
dug into the book yet.
yeah,
But, gosh, what's a most disturbing book you've ever
yeah.
read? Um, Disturbing, not necessarily well, yes, in terms of some content, but I had read, and one of my nonfiction reads last year was Midnight in Chernobyl.
Oh,
And, going through kind of like the timeline of events and what happened, and then just what happened politically at the end of that, and just the w it was just such a disheartening and disgraceful, failure of, you know, just basic human decency in so many levels. But amazed to read that, like, the temperature at the core of the plant at the time of the meltdown was almost equivalent to the surface of the sun.
yeah.
And the idea of like, people, a guy opening a door and then closing it, and in that split second getting a fatal dose of radiation, and just so realizing just how, I mean, these forces of nature that we're working with, and I just sort of like, and all the failures there were bureaucratic and political, and all about maintaining an ideology and protecting that ideology over protecting people. And there's something just about that. Well,
Yeah.
it was just existentially disturbing, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
Not disturbing in the way that a horror book would be, but just disturbing, and
Oh.
it's just such a failure.
Oh,
Um,
I can very
yeah.
much see that. Yeah. I haven't watched the HBO Chernobyl. I know it's
Ooh,
incredibly well done. It's just
yeah.
it's kind of just like psyching yourself up for like, okay, when do I want to be just like gut punched and all that.
Yeah, it's brilliantly realized. I was just warning advance. Episode 4 is the sad one, the really
Uh,
sad one.
I was just gonna say,
Uh,
is there any happy episodes in that series?
well, no happy ones, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's
That's where,
in
yeah.
terms of great drama. But yeah,
Yeah.
although once again, you want to talk about, well, this gets us back to, there's the earlier discussion of, can there be like objective criticisms of like failures of storytelling,
Hmm.
and there is one mistake,
Oh.
a really big mistake that they, and I don't, maybe it was a dramatic choice, but basically they have something happen. I don't know if I should mention it or not, but it involves a character who is pregnant, and she's the
Hmm.
wife of a firefighter trying to figure out like what's happened to my husband, right? Anyway, something happens with her that is biologically impossible. And so and that was immediate, like everybody was like, that would not happen in real life.
Mm.
If you've watched the show, you will probably be able to suss out what I'm talking about. I don't want to talk about it and spoil it specifically for anybody who hasn't watched it, but let me just say, if you get to the point where you're asking yourself, would that happen?
The
Then
answer is no.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You've gotten to it.
Yeah.
But apart from that weird little decision that the writers made for whatever reason, yeah, it's a remarkable. It is a terrifying show. Again, just in showing the complete breakdown of just the responsibility of a leadership to the public.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's the thing. Unfortunately, yeah. So often this, like I think this comment sums it up well. That so many it's times it's stories that have the potential, or obviously in the case, not even just potential, in the case of Chernobyl, to become reality or have been reality, that really speak to me on that level. And I definitely have to be in the right mood. And that's a big thing I've really looked at, is like, I think the reason, like, I actually didn't read horror until I was an adult, kind of in the place I am right now, that I do think it's a privilege to be able to consume really dark and disturbing material. And there's a little bit of security, I think, in like my life that comes, with the ability for me to, read that. I've actually, I know there's some really interesting articles and discussion about why horror is not as popular in certain countries and places in the world that have a lot of
Mhm.
real life horror going on. And it's kind of a very, first, for lack of a better word, first world
Mhm.
thing that often are really
Yeah.
drawn to those stories. So I always try to check my privilege that, again, it's the security of the fact that, I, can read those disturbing stories because they haven't happened to me, because they're
Mhm.
someone else. And that's
Right.
actually, I guess I'll give a small sneak preview to say that my end of the year best. So I filmed my backlist books for dark fiction, but coming up
Mhm.
talking about my end of the year stabby and dark books for like published in 2022.
Mhm.
And I ended up finding out the stories that really spoke to me. Again, I found like a lot of the ones were very surface level, just like here's a bunch of scary. I don't know, it's just hitting on this horror tropes without having really the, I don't know, the depth underneath that I'm looking for.
Conviction.
But
Mhm.
exactly. But there was three stories. I don't know if they're all going to make my short list, but there was three different stories that spoke to me this year that were fictionalized stories that were the author pulling from their own real life trauma and
Mhm.
bringing it into their fictional stories. I read three of them, and they messed me up because I was like, oh my gosh, like you could see how raw it was. And I can only imagine the pain of writing, like writing through that. I get, you hope it's therapeutic for the author, but oh my goodness, there was a few of them.
Yeah.
So definitely are those going to be, they'll show up in my end of the year content for
Yeah,
sure,
when
just
the
because,
writer is
yeah.
exorcising demons,
Oh my
it's like,
gosh.
oh
Yeah.
boy, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a very brave thing, to kind of put that out there.
Yeah.
Um, but dear Willem, I've wanted to, yeah, I have that her secret. I think we just need to like bottle her brain juice and sell it or
I have
whatever.
no life.
Uh,
Anyway, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Anyway, I hate to say it, I should probably start to wrap it up here unless there's any
Yeah.
final comments to sneak in there, only because I turn into a pumpkin after
Lisa
around 10
wants to
o'clock my time.
know where to start reading sci-fi.
Hmm.
Just the I always tell folks to jump into what you're already familiar with. A lot of people who've never read science fiction have experienced it in movie form or TV form. And so, for example, let's say if you've ever watched a particular show and you've really liked it, whether it's, let's say, Star Trek or Doctor Who or something like that. Well, there are really well established science fiction writers who have done novelizations for those IPs, right? Alistair Reynolds wrote a Doctor Who book. Okay. A lot of well-known writers are kind of dipping their toes into that. V. Castro, we talked about earlier, the Goddess of Filth, has written an Aliens book, right? So I always encourage people, if you want to kind of dip your toe in, find an IP that you're a big fan of, maybe from something else, dig into some of those novelizations, and then look for original works by those writers if you liked those writers. Timothy Zahn is a guy who is well known for writing some of the most popular books in what was, before Disney took over, the Star Wars expanded universe in book form, like the Thrawn trilogy, a bunch of stuff. But he also has a long track record of writing some very well received, for example, military science fiction and action adventure science fiction. So, like the Cobra trilogy and books like that, just going back years. So, for example, that would be something that I would tell. So, like, he's a guy. If you like his Star Wars stuff, look at his things. And there are many other writers that I can give examples of that for. So, that could be an easy way to kind of dip your toe into science fiction because it's very widely discussed among like established readers of science fiction that, unlike fantasy, which tends to like get into very easy to grasp themes and tropes and ideas, and science fiction kind of has its own language in many ways, and it's very difficult to find on-ramp novels
Yeah.
for new readers. And so that's kind of my solution to that.
I like that perspective. The nice thing is you mentioned, Melissa, kind of what genres you normally read. So that's the other way I'd often go is kind of saying like finding those genre blenders. So I definitely there's a lot of sci-fi horror as Thomas and I both enjoy, or at least we try to find the good ones. So if you think of something even like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like one that kind of blends together the genres, or especially when you get into thrillers, like there's a book called Six Wakes, which is about a group of clones that wake up on I think it's a generational ship, and one of them is being murdered, and have to figure out
They've all been
which
murdered.
one did it. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, they've all been murdered
yeah,
literally, and the clones have
all
woken
their
up.
former bodies
Yeah.
have been murdered, and they're like,
Yes, thank you.
yeah.
Exactly. So you think about that. So it's like it's science fiction. It's in space. There's clones, things like that. But at the same time, it's like I love it because it's a closed room mystery, which
Mhm.
is like very core familiar genre if you read kind of
Genre
into
mashups,
thrillers.
all kinds of
So
fun.
I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of good ones. Again, like there's popular ones like Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Mhm.
I really like Saturn Run by John
Uh,
Catine, John Sanford and
yeah,
Catine. There we
and
go. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And, yeah, there's lots of those, and now
yeah,
now the next wave seems to be like Western mashups. We're getting horror
yeah.
Westerns and science fiction Westerns again.
Yeah, the
So I'm thrilled.
Firefly wannabes are coming back, but I'm
Yeah,
okay with
well, I
it.
mean, hopefully, yeah, just, maybe a slightly different than that, but I'm very interested in this book, Frontier.
Oh, yes, I
Great
added it
Curtis.
to my
Yeah,
TBR again from your list. So
yeah,
again, if
so
anyone after watching this, if they're still awake after I'm going to bed, definitely hop over to Thomas's channel, binge through all of his videos, and click "Want to Read" on every single Goodreads title you see there. Because if you look at you can literally see me watching
uh,
your video. If someone wants to look at my Goodreads feed, it's literally like "Want to Read," "Want to Read," like
all of my yeah, God, look, 9 dozen books over
yeah.
3 videos. That was wild, but yeah,
Yeah, so the
yeah.
challenge is how many can we read by next year? But
Mhm.
I'm up
Yeah.
for it. Oh, and I don't know if I'm allowed to actually out him, but my husband might have given the answer to how I read so much. The answer is
Oh.
she reads
There's
always.
that,
There we
always.
go. See,
Yes,
that's
okay,
the
okay.
really exciting answer there. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure I
that
was
that
allowed
is,
to
I
out him
mean,
one.
that is when you get right down to it, you just sit around, you open the book and just do the thing, right? Like
Yeah,
how do
it's the
writers
less
write?
glamorous and
How do
the less
writers write
glamorous
who
interest.
writes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it, Peter Brett wrote The Warded Man,
Yeah.
like, on his BlackBerry?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, like, he did his first draft, like, he'd be standing in line at the bank, right? But
Yeah.
writing his book, so it was like, so, yeah, time management, that's what it's all
Yeah.
about.
And that's always been me. Like I'm literally like I had a whole bunch of doctor appointments. We were trying to have our tour and like or my kids. Sorry, I keep outing myself on camera. But anyway, um, and yeah, basically going through it. Yeah, like I was known as like the person. They were like, "Oh, you're the woman with the book," and I like every nurse knew me there as the woman with the book because everyone else just scrolled their phones and like looked at Instagram all day, and I'd like have like a physical book there and like go through it. But it's like I'd be waiting there easily an hour at a time. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
eh,
Oh.
huh.
Oh.
Anyway, I hate to say it. I think my brain is going. I'm
Yeah,
starting
I'm
to
well,
trip
just the
on
fact that I'm
camera.
even up and moving about at all after this production week I've had. And it's like,
Sounds
and
good.
2 reviews for me next week, so it's
Oh, I
going
love
well.
it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And I'll be starting my end of the year front list titles coming up in a few weeks. I'm so ready to be done. Like I
Yes.
love my end of the year content and I'm like I already want to be done. It's like only early what December and I'm like, am I done yet? Am I done yet? So I had this like all ambitious plans. You look, I have like a whole list of videos in those description box of what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I had been less ambitious now.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have
Yeah.
promised all this content and told
Oh,
people I was gonna do it.
yeah, now you're stuck. You're
Yeah,
stuck.
exactly. Accountability.
You brought it on yourself, yes.
Yeah, I
Well,
did this.
oh well.
Sounds good. Well, I think I'll wrap it up here. Again, thank you so much, Thomas, for joining me. It was a little
Thank
bit of
you
a
for
last minute
inviting
ask,
me. It's
so
very nice to be able to share your 20th anniversary
yeah.
celebration with you, and congratulations again. 20th
Thank you.
anniversary, when I said
I
20th.
sound very old.
See, yeah, she's, my brain is going as
Yeah,
well.
I was gonna say we're going down. I've already said that myself. Actually, for anyone who noticed when I first put up the notification for this live stream, I definitely called it the 20K livestock celebration. So a bunch of people sent me pictures of cows because it was like all about like livestock celebration. I left it up for almost a day like that before I noticed.
That's beautiful.
I was
That's
like, this is why people go to my channel for the quality detailed content.
valuable. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's high
Oh my
production
goodness.
values, indeed.
Yeah. Thank you,
More
everybody.
cows in BookTube, I think, it's necessary. I vote for
Yeah.
more cows.
So this is my announcement video to let everyone know I'm starting a second channel where I'll be reviewing different livestock and I'll have a different
Mm-hmm.
animal featured every week.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely stay
Mm,
tuned for that.
yes. Oh,
There we go. Love it. 20 20K livestock.
uh,
Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. I think I'll call it here, and
thanks
I'll see you all soon.
again. Good
Okay,
night.
bye. Bye.
Bye.